Are calling the most extensive investigation into the group in history. Fox 43 reveals the investigation will likely lead to an official report that could have major consequences for the Jehovah's Witness organization.
The first time was a Wednesday morning.
Martin Hawk was assigning door-to-door routes for the Red Lion Jehovah's Witnesses congregation when a teenage member slipped inside the Kingdom Hall with Hawk's 4-year-old daughter.
I caught him, fondling my daughter. I didn't know what to do. I actually didn't do anything the first time, as I didn't know if I saw that.
The second time was a Sunday morning.
My daughter disappeared again for the second time, and I freaked out. I was really scared because I knew he was there, and I saw him assaulting our daughter.
Even after the third time, for a true believer, there was nowhere to turn. The Hawks relied on divine justice, not secular.
The police are controlled by Satan, the justices. So we can't get justice for anybody out there.
The world is lying in the power of the wicked one.
In 2005, they reported the abuse to the elders, but not to police.
You're told to wait on Jehovah.
So they waited 11 years.
I wish it was the child abuse that woke me up, but it wasn't.
Hawk is now one of dozens of witnesses to testify before a Pennsylvania grand jury that's investigating an alleged systemic cover-up of child sexual abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. The group, also known as the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, has 8.7 million members worldwide, including 1.2 million in America and 83,000 in Pennsylvania. It was founded in Pittsburgh in the 1870s, breaking with Orthodox Christianity over its focus on Armageddon and separation from the world. In recent months, Pennsylvania Attorney General Michelle Henry announced sex abuse charges against 9 members of Jehovah's Witnesses, hinting at a larger pattern.
Some of these defendants even use their faith communities to prey upon the victims, and others had to look no further than their own families.
Defense lawyer Dan Kiss said his client, Robert Ostrander, was singled out to advance a bigger investigation.
This seems to me, in large part, to be Catholic Church Part 2. They're making this about the Jehovah's Witness religion.
In February, I asked the Attorney General if she was investigating the organization as a whole. Her response:
"This is an ongoing investigation."
The Attorney General's office says they still can't comment on the investigation, but wrote in a statement, "The relevance of the Jehovah's Witnesses organization to the investigation is outlined in the grand jury's presentments regarding each defendant who has been charged. Those presentments articulate incidents where defendants use their positions of authority within Jehovah's Witnesses congregations to build trust with children who they later abused." Now, multiple sources confirm the state attorney general's office is investigating the organization, with a report likely to follow.
I understand there is a grand jury convened on these issues.
From my understanding, that there is a grand jury going on.
The investigation is wrapping up. 9 Jehovah's Witness men have been arrested for child abuse in the past 4 months in Pennsylvania, with many more arrests coming. My little work has helped arrest some of those men.
Sources say the report is expected to detail Jehovah's Witnesses' internal judicial system and how it allegedly fails to hold abusers accountable.
There is tremendous abuse in the faith that is intrafamilial. And so many victims in the faith have been locked in because they're not allowed to tell the authorities. And the proof element in the church has been so high. So it's disastrous.
For an internal investigation, Watchtower requires 2 people to witness the abuse, a standard that in many cases is impossible to meet. In recent years, DNA evidence can be considered as the second witness.
The odds of child abuse, including DNA evidence, especially when you're not encouraged to go to the police right away, is almost zero. It's not going to happen.
The Hawks did go to the police in 2017, shortly after they grew disillusioned with the church and left. In 2018, John Logan Hawk, Martin's step-cousin, was charged with indecent assault of a person under the age of 13. But because John was about 14 years old at the time, the charges were ultimately dropped. Martin says he will continue to work with the Attorney General's office to ensure what happened to his daughter never happens to someone else's.
I would love to see the headquarters held accountable because it is their policy that has led thousands of young kids to be abused, victimized over and over again.
Jehovah's Witnesses responded in a statement that the scriptural investigation does not purport to offer an alternative process to the secular authorities' investigation of allegations of the crime of sexual abuse. They added that the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses does not shield any perpetrator of child abuse from the secular authorities. Elders will report an allegation of abuse to the statutory authorities as required by law. A Pennsylvania grand jury has recently brought child sex abuse charges against 9 men, all Jehovah's Witnesses, in what some are calling the most extensive investigation ever done of the group. But it's following a familiar playbook written over 2 decades of similar investigations of the Catholic Church, the Philadelphia Diocese in 2003 and the Altoona-Johnstown Diocese in 2016. 2 other investigations looked into child sex abuse at Penn State and Solbury Boarding School in Bucks County.
There is no state in the country that has more knowledge about the way abuse operates in institutions than Pennsylvania.
In 2018, then Attorney General Josh Shapiro released a damning report that the state's remaining 6 dioceses had protected more than 300 predator priests.
That wasn't the only institution that we worked to hold accountable. Before I left the Attorney General's office, we made a handful of arrests of former Jehovah's Witnesses.
The crux of the Jehovah's Witnesses investigation hinges on whether elders, unpaid leaders in the church, qualify as clergy. In Pennsylvania, clergy are mandated reporters, meaning if they have reasonable cause to suspect a child is the victim of abuse, they legally have to report it to the authorities. But in 33 states, including the Keystone State, there's an exemption for clergy who learn about the abuse during personal spiritual communications, like confession.
This is a privilege that is created by the state. It is not required by the First Amendment.
Lawyers for Jehovah's Witnesses have argued in multiple court cases across the country that elders are clergy and therefore don't have to report confidential spiritual communications. In 2020, the Ivy Hill Jehovah's Witnesses congregation in Philadelphia asked a Commonwealth court to officially rule elders have clergy penitent privilege. The court denied the request. Jehovah's Witnesses wrote in a statement, Jehovah's Witnesses do not use full-time paid clergy. However, elders are ministers who often meet the statutory definition of clergy in the state where they reside, in that they are authorized to hear confessions. On the other hand, clergy still have to report abuse discovered outside of spiritual communication. That could open up lawsuits against elders who covered up known abuse.
Watchtower loves to say that we have no paid clergy, so therefore that they do not have to mandate reporting. But on the other hand, they want to play it both ways. Well, they want to say they want all the privileges of clergy. So
Martin Hawk is a former Jehovah's Witnesses elder who didn't report his own daughter's sexual assaults to police for 11 years.
Even though I had doubts and fears, I was still a true believer at that time. So I thought that we would get justice for my daughter through the organization, not through the legal system.
A 2002 BBC report revealed Watchtower kept a secret database of allegations of child molestation. Hawk says it still exists.
Every King Mall has documents of child abuse, of drinking, spousal abuse, rape, homosexuality, any kind of thing, drug abuse going back for 70 years, the 1950s.
When Hawk was an elder, he admits he helped destroy some of them.
We were told by headquarters to shred all the records.
He left the religion in 2016 and is now helping with the investigation, which he says is why he was offered immunity from potential charges for not reporting abuse when he was an elder, though we could not confirm that with the Attorney General's office. Leaving the faith is called disfellowshipping in the church. Among those leaving, it's called waking up. Hawk says he now wants other elders to change their thinking on child sex abuse.
What I want to see is Jehovah's Witnesses, first, not call the branch, not call the headquarters, not call the legal department. I want to see every single time when they learn of child abuse, call the experts.
Legal experts say under more scrutiny, Jehovah's Witnesses may not have an option. They have to follow the law.
Whatever is happening within the religious community does not stand in for what must happen with respect to the law that applies to everybody else.
Jehovah's Witnesses said in a statement that elders do report abuse allegations as required by law, writing, "The religion of Jehovah's Witnesses does not shield any perpetrator of child abuse from the secular authorities." Pennsylvania last updated its child abuse code in 2014, leaving in clergy penitent privilege. Some lawmakers want to change that.
And I can promise you that I will look to introduce a bill that will get that done.
No matter how much child sex abuse the report ends up revealing, justice remains out of reach for many victims because their statute of limitations has run out.
This has been over 18 years that this battle has gone on in this building.
State Representative Mark Rossi, himself a survivor of childhood sex abuse at the hands of a Catholic priest, has long championed legislation that would open a retroactive 2-year window for child victims to sue their abusers.
Give these victims their 2 years back.
2 years is an important time frame because before 1991, child sexual victims had 2 years to report their abuse.
Put yourself in my position as a 13-year-old being raped in the shower, and you're supposed to know what a statute of limitations is?
Child USA says on average, survivors don't report until the age of 52. Since 2019, child sex abuse victims can file civil charges until the age of 55 against the abusers themselves and any organization that protected them. But that doesn't apply to past assaults.
We have to hold the people accountable who have done this, the perpetrators, and the institutions who aided and abetted this. It's that simple.
Rossi was unexpectedly elected Speaker of the House in January 2023. He used the post to help push the measure through the House. The Senate also passed it, but bundled with 2 unrelated issues, both deeply unpopular with Democrats. On April 25th, the House removed the other amendments and sent the measure back to the Senate as a standalone bill, where it will likely stall.
It won't pass without the other amendments in the Senate.
Rossi says the bill is the only path forward for child sex abuse victims to hold organizations accountable for protecting their abusers.
The members of the Senate have been blocking this. They should be embarrassed over there that they can't do their simplest job protecting the greatest resources of this state, our children.
Governor Josh Shapiro supports the 2-year legal window to file civil suits, which was also one of the recommendations of the grand jury investigation he led on child abuse within the Catholic Church.
That is unfinished business, that final piece of it. And I'm working with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to see them pass legislation, pass a constitutional amendment that will allow those who are abused to confront their abusers in court.
This statutory window could cost the Catholic Church and Jehovah's Witnesses millions of dollars.
Now, some people have said, well, it could bankrupt some of the Catholic churches. Too bad. They are already morally bankrupt.
The Harrisburg Catholic Diocese did file for bankruptcy protection in 2020 after paying $12.7 million to more than 100 survivors of clergy sex abuse. In February 2023, the diocese reached a settlement, setting aside $18 million for future claimants who come forward. Experts say that's much less than victims would have gotten without the bankruptcy reorganization.
The victims are getting pennies on the dollar.
Jehovah's Witnesses has taken notice, hiring the same lawyer who represented the Catholic Church. Meanwhile, multiple sources say the grand jury report into Jehovah's Witnesses could come out within weeks. You were involved in the beginnings of the 49th investigative grand jury against Jehovah's Witnesses. Can we expect a similar report?
I can't comment on the investigation. That'll be up to the Attorney General, Michelle Henry.
The Attorney General's office says they can't go into specifics of the investigation, but wrote in a statement, "The relevance of the Jehovah's Witnesses organization to the investigation is outlined in the grand jury presentments regarding each defendant who has been charged. Those presentments articulate incidents where defendants use their position of authority within Jehovah's Witnesses congregations to build trust with children who they later abused." If a report is released, it could be the impetus needed to pass the statutory window.
the question of whether is inevitable. It's going to pass.
And that could help victims of child sexual abuse by the Catholic Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, and more. Sources say officials are already considering investigations into other religious organizations in Pennsylvania. Harry Lee, Fox 43 News.